Make a flytrap terrarium.
I want to see Venus flytraps.
Venus
Some
flytrap.
are lame.
Missed opportunity.
Wow, why didn't you put flytraps in it? What
Can you
a waste.
really make a
Help me make a
flytrap
flytrap
terrarium?
terrarium?
Venus flytrap. Hi, I'm Connor. Welcome back to Hypnotic Exotics. We're making the flytrap terrarium. Play the new intro thing. The Venus flytrap is by far one of the most well-known and spectacular carnivorous plants in cultivation, and quite frankly, I'm confident in saying that this one plant is the sole reason why so many people began growing carnivores in the first place. But before I get started with the terrarium, some research is required. Luckily though, I'm doing it all for you. I like to begin my research by looking into the native range of whatever I intend to grow, more specifically the states or regions these plants call home and the climate of those locations. Doing so will essentially give me a better idea of what those plants prefer and allow me to make more informed decisions when I'm making a habitat for their cultivation. Even though Venus flytraps have been introduced in numerous regions worldwide, they're actually really only native to the sandy wetlands of North and South Carolina. More specifically, within a 60-mile radius of Wilmington, North Carolina. That's a pretty small range for a genus, especially if you're considering that its closest relative, Aldrovanda vesiculosa, has been found all over the world. Now, this location in North Carolina is special because it has three things that make it a very perfect place for Venus flytraps. It has warm to hot summers, mild winters with little freezing, and then regular rain year-round. This results in a warm wetland environment where nutrients and detritus, for lack of a better term, are washed away faster than they can build up, whereas the mild winters with little freezing gives the plants a time for their metabolism to take a break without the risk of freezing or rotting. Now, knowing the climate and where the plants thrive isn't enough though. So I'm going to take advantage of every available resource and take a look at how those in the carnivorous plant community grow their own Venus flytraps. Let's get the big one out of the way early. Feeding. People in the community normally let the Venus flytraps catch their own food as they're grown outdoors. Others choose to hand feed them things like crickets or mealworms, whereas I personally choose to feed my Venus flytraps a blend of fish food. Okay, so light. More often than not, Venus flytraps are grown outdoors in a water tray, receiving no less than 6 hours of direct sun. Sunlight is the main motivation for doing this, as the 20 to 50,000 lux of light that these plants require can be a pain in the ass to replicate indoors. I personally grow all my Venus flytraps indoors, planted in 20-ounce foam cups, though I intend to replace the foam cups with cheaper 3D printed pots in the future. Growers can often get away with growing their Venus flytraps on a windowsill as well. Household temperatures tend to be just fine for these plants, and supplemental humidity, while beneficial, is not required. A select few choose to grow their Venus flytraps in a terrarium, and those who have found success doing so have taken great care to provide a deep substrate, lots of airflow, and plenty of light. Regardless of location, majority of the community uses deeper pots, around 4 inches. These pots are often seen with a peat or a sphagnum-based mix sitting in a tray of water no deeper than 1/4 of the height of the pot. The plants also need a dormancy period. A dormancy is a span of time where the plant either slows or stops their metabolic activity altogether. This response is often triggered by seasonal change, though, like with most plants, it can be induced manually. Those in the community provide this dormancy in a handful of different ways, and some even skip it to provide a boost to smaller rot-prone seedlings. I know it sounds like a lot, but it can be narrowed down into 2 simple methods. The first one is the au naturel method, taking advantage of the seasonal change outdoors to allow the plant to go dormant on its own. And then the second method is the cold storage method, utilizing the cold controlled environment of your refrigerator to provide a nice little cozy winter nap for your plant. I intend to provide an all-natural dormancy for this flytrap terrarium as the climate I'm in allows me to do so. The last thing that every successful grower uses is good water. So that means tap water, Dasani, your Brita filter, okay? Only rain, reverse osmosis, or distilled water, okay? These plants are incredibly sensitive and crazy well adapted to their environment. So any presence of any unwelcome dissolved solids is enough to kill them. Do you get it? That also means no fertilizer, no miracle grow, and no enriched soils. If there's going to be fertilizer in the soil of my flytrap, I'm gonna be the one putting it there. Okay, now that I've established a better understanding of how those in the community grow their own Venus flytraps, I'm once again asking you to reflect on the 6 key variables that should be kept in mind when caring for these fascinating little plants. They are soil, water, light, temperature, humidity, and fresh air flow. If I want to properly account for these variables, I'm gonna need some supplies. First off, I'm gonna need a Venus flytrap. For this terrarium, I have chosen one of my sauciest seed-grown individuals. It has a great combination of vigor and color. And then I'm going to need a medium-sized terrarium. This one is about 8 inches across by 8 inches tall and 4 inches deep. This soil barrier I printed for the reservoir. Believe it or not, this node in the center is actually a wick. I've already incorporated this into a prototype that allows me to tray water Nepenthes. Isn't that wild? I'm excited for that. A simple printed tube as tall as you want the soil, with some holes cut out in the bottom for better water flow. I had trouble with it last time. A small piece of mesh to fill any gaps between the tube and the barrier, as well as the barrier and the terrarium. Peat moss, perlite, rinsed sand, distilled water, rainwater, or reverse osmosis water. You should have it down by now. A light with a minimum color temperature of 5,000 Kelvin, preferably 22 watts or greater. It's always best to overshoot with power in regards to lights, as you can always raise the light if leaf burn occurs. It's just easier. Spend the extra $5 to ensure that you didn't waste 15. A light fixture or method to mount this light, and a 24-hour outlet timer, which is entirely optional if you have better discipline than I do. So what I intend to make is called a planted terrarium. So not only would I have to choose the correct soil for the plant, but actually construct the terrarium in a way that promotes root growth and wards off rot. Simply put, I'm making it so the soil doesn't sit in water. None of those careful decisions matter if everything is soaked. So the first thing I'm going to do is create the water reservoir. I'm going to use the wicking barrier I made to do this in one step. The embedded wick raises the barrier up about 1.5 inches, acting like the rocks from my first video, while leaving a small cavity beneath to fill with water. The printed tube acts as a means to fill and drain the reservoir without disturbing or saturating the soil. The slots in the bottom of the tube allow water to flow through more easily, as like I said, that was a problem with the last one. Now, if you want to make a wicking reservoir like this using household materials, check out my first episode of Growing Carnivorous Plants for an equally thorough guide. Cool, so the self-watering reservoir is done. Now I can start adding the soil. The first layer is going to be about 1 inch of rinsed sand. I'm leaving the wick uncovered so the next layer makes contact with the water source. If you're going to be doing this yourself, rinse the sand. Don't be a lazy bitch. Rinsing it removes any dissolved solids or salts that could be harmful to the plant. What's the point of doing this if skipping one step kills it? Next comes the most thick and important layer of soil. I've chosen the classic 2:1:1 ratio of peat, rinsed sand, and perlite for this. This recipe is fantastic for most carnivores as it creates a moist, airy soil that doesn't compact very easily. Peat moss is also hydrophobic when it's dry, so it's always actually a good idea to hydrate your soil even if you're not going to sterilize it. Now that it's filled, I'm going to top it off with a layer of rinsed sand. This will help to prevent rot and pests in the future. Before I put the plant in, I want to flush the entire terrarium a couple times. The best way to do so is to flood the terrarium via the watering tube. Siphoning the excess water out does work, but I'm using a kerosene pump from Ace Hardware, which is far easier. And if you hadn't guessed, the watering tube is the only means at which I intend to water this plant. Well, aside from misting. Still, avoid top watering if you're going to do this. The whole point of this is to keep the soil from sitting in the water. We don't want an anaerobic environment. Now I'm ready to move the flytrap into its new home. The first thing I do is make a hole for the roots of the plant. Using my finger, or whatever tool I can find, I push it through the center of the soil, making a hole straight down that is slightly deeper than the roots of the flytrap. Once planted, I add more soil if needed, and thoroughly water the pot from above. Doing so will allow for the soil to fill any cavities that I created during the planting process. You gotta fill those holes. Now that this guy is planted, I need to provide ample light. While this terrarium will do fine on a sunny windowsill, I'm choosing to put this plant under grow lights with the rest of my fly traps as I've been getting excellent color with them. I'm gonna say this plenty of times, but if you're gonna do this, do the math. Like seriously, find an online lux lumens calculator, figure out the beam angle of the light you're interested in, figure out how high you want it to be, throw in the rest of the relevant numbers, and bam, it'll let you know if it's good enough. If you get 20 to 50,000 lux, then you're Gucci. If you get more than that, you're even better. Just be careful not burning the plant. That's all. But I digress. I already have a grow light that will suffice. It is a Yescom brand 225 LED panel. Alrighty, temperature. The best way to maintain the correct temperatures for temperate plants like Venus flytraps is just take advantage of the ambient conditions of your home. Don't worry about if it's hotter upstairs or colder downstairs. You know, they're not particularly picky about temperature, at least until winter dormancy comes. Next is humidity. Keeping humidity high is often something that's struggled with in the carnivorous plant community, but fortunately with Venus flytraps, they're not too picky about humidity, so you don't really gotta do anything to account for that. With that said, in pursuit of an easier transition for the flytrap, I'm still going to be misting the terrarium a couple times a day to give the humidity a boost and to take away just another thing that the plant has to compensate for. If you're going to do this, be sure not to wet the crown of the plant too much, as again, terrariums limit airflow and create a small, warm, controlled environment for rot and other shit to happen. Alrighty, all I need to do now is tidy things up a little bit and put the guy under the grow light. Now, there are a couple things that I would have done differently when building this terrarium. It mostly has to do with the barrier itself. I didn't pay enough attention to the geometry of the barrier and where it meets the edge of the terrarium. There's a little bit of a space for sand to fall through, and you know, this could actually continue over time, and as the sand washes away, it creates a cavity under the soil that stuff can collapse into. And that's something that I'm gonna have to be keeping an eye on, because every time I flush the terrarium or want to rinse away any dissolved solids, that's going to happen. Before I go, I want to cover two things real quick. First off, the Growing Carnivorous Plants playlist is probably going to end with this video. It has nothing to do with resources or my interest in the channel, but has more to do with the fact that there are awesome care tutorials out there already. I mean, there are literal carnivorous plant nurseries showing you how they do it. Nothing gets better than that. I mean, I even follow their tutorials, like, come on. And the second thing, though, is in regards to the future of the channel. I intend to be doing some very fun things, and the fact that I haven't uploaded in a year and you guys have still watched enough to get me to meet the qualifications of monetization is definitely a fire under my ass in that regard. So expect to see some crazy shit like tray watering Nepenthe spots, mutating seeds at home, cross-genus hybrids, Peltier cooled highland growth chambers, and a lot more random shit that I am just gonna do when I'm bored. Now, if you have any tips for these botanical endeavors, let me know in the comments below. And not just care tips, like if I'm pronouncing something incorrectly, conveying the wrong information, or if you want to see something as well, or if I could have done something better, please do tell me, because my goal for this channel is to create high quality, accurate information about these peculiar little plants, and I really cannot do that without your help.